Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar this afternoon. We're so excited at HR Professionals Magazine to be presenting Dr. Dennis Kerner and Cindy Ogden. And we are going to be talking about the turnover solution this afternoon and how to stop the churn. And we are so excited because today we just received notification that this webinar has been approved for HRCI business credit. Yay. So we'll be getting your credits out to you shortly along with an evaluation. So be watching for your email. We appreciate your input on our webinars. That helps us to make them better each time. So thank you for your participation. I want to let you know that today you're in listen only mode, and you will have available to you the chat box. We want you to participate. So please use your chat box to type in your questions, and we will have about a 10-minute Q&A session at the end. So you can get all your questions answered before we hang up this afternoon. Before we get started, I want to introduce you. Dr. Dennis Kerner is President and CEO of ITN, a leading provider of statistical services for human resource departments, specializing in database methods designed to improve workforce retention and productivity. Dennis is also principal and founder of the Assessment Standard Institute, ASI, a leading authority for the development and implementation of psychometric-based standards. Wow. That's so impressive, Dr. Kerner. Next, we have Cindy. Cindy Ogden is president of Fuel It, an immersive training solutions firm in Memphis, Tennessee. Cindy has more than 20 years of talent strategy and development experience working for both large and small businesses. Along with offering an extensive library of instructor-led and e-learning courses, her team specializes in the development of custom solutions based on the results of the turnover audit. I am going to turn it over to Cindy now, and I will be back with you at the end of our session to moderate our Q&A session. Take it away, Cindy.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. I appreciate the introductions. And Dennis and I are very glad to be here to share with the HR community information about this new tool that will change the way you address employee retention. In this session, we will show you how to measure and identify the key factors that cause employee turnover in relation to the job, the team, the management, and the organization. We'll also show you how to use data to guide you and help you create and implement a strategic plan that will reduce turnover, that focuses on hiring the right person for the job, providing them a targeted training program, and inspiring employees to be their best. And then we'll wrap this up by discussing getting leadership buy-in and aligning your resources based on the audit results, along with the key business objectives. So before we get into it, I wanted to ask a quick poll question. So let me put that up there right now. I'm curious, what is your turnover look like in your organization? Wow. In a second, got a few more entries coming in. All right, let's share the results. It looks like the numbers here, 0 to 25% is the largest group, and then 25 to 50%. Okay. That is very good to help us see where we need to focus. Stop share results. All right, so let's talk about this. Pre-pandemic, but I would say more than a year ago, employers were experiencing the highest rates ever in employee job switching. And during the pandemic, some industries, they have actually seen a slowdown. Employees are thankful to still have jobs, and some companies are seeing the lowest job switching rates in over 9 years. However, according to a recent HR executive blog post, 1 in 4 workers currently plan to quit their job in as soon as things return to normal. And so if your organization is one of those that is currently seeing the lowest turnover numbers. I wouldn't expect it to last much longer. For those who really haven't seen the difference, pandemic or not, there's a few reasons why this is happening, and Dennis alluded to it earlier as we were just chatting before this started. And it's typically related to low-wage workforces. So it's all about the ease of movement is why we're seeing these changes and trends, right? Because there's a shortage of labor. It's very easy, especially for low-wage earners, to change jobs because there's abundance of jobs available to choose from. In addition, changing jobs, there's not that stigma that there used to be. I know when I first entered the workforce many years ago, I will say my parents both cautioned me about make sure you find a job that you stick with and you stay there 5, 10, 15 years because you don't want to be viewed as a job hopper, right? And I don't think that stigma is around anymore. And so it's commonplace for people just to switch 5 or 10 times in 5 or 10 years. So it's just become commonplace. And as a result, it becomes more important for us to fully understand our employees and engage them in every way possible. This is a large and fundamental shift from traditional management practices in the past. And so managers really need to change their focus in the way that they are thinking about engaging with their employees. And so that's what we're going to provide you in this program. Employees, of course, leave their jobs for a variety of reasons. I mean, it can range from I don't like my coworkers to being micromanaged by my boss, or I'm just simply not challenged. It's easiest to say employees leave voluntarily because their expectations and the realities of the job, they just don't match. They're not aligned. And when expectations are not met, the motivation to move increases. So turnover occurs because I'm not fulfilled in my job and I can leave because I have options. Employee expectations, if you think about it, are like an iceberg, right? Often we see the outward behaviors that are visible at the top. We don't understand, though, the underlying values, beliefs, experiences, and abilities that drive those expectations. And understanding and meeting your employee needs in these areas is really the key to retention. The way to improve retention is to align those values, beliefs, and expectations and abilities that the employee has with the company. This process starts by hiring applicants who already most closely align with the company expectations. Hiring is then followed by training that helps the employee both meet their own personal needs for growth while improving their value to the company. And then create the proper work environment that builds connections, one that aligns job needs with personal needs. Alignment allows employees to feel like they fit in with the community that they work. The bottom line is the better the employee fit, the more likely they are to stay. And retention is a comprehensive approach. It is focused on hiring the right people for the job, giving them the training they need to be successful, and creating an environment that inspires them to be their best. And a lot of that comes down to having proper management. So aside from pay and benefits, there are 3 common reasons that employees decide to leave, related to it not being the right alignment between job needs and personal needs. The first one is it's just not a good fit, meaning, the person comes in, they're really excited about the job when they're hired, and then they just don't have the right skills or attributes needed to be successful in the job. You might see that in things like you hire someone with a customer service experience background to handle collections, for example. Those are 2 very different skill sets. And you think, oh, because they've done customer service, they'll be good at doing collections. But the skills that are required are vastly different. And so it just isn't a good fit. And very quickly, that person feels like I'm a failure and they end up leaving. The lack of opportunities is another thing. When you have organizations with a set structure and a lot of tenure, I've heard many employees saying, well, I don't have any opportunities to be promoted. There's no development, no growth. So I might as well go somewhere else to move ahead. And then also you see a poor work environment. And this is probably one of the bigger ones, when employees don't get along with their coworkers or they don't feel supported by their manager, they just leave. Plus, the new world of working remotely, it presents even greater challenges for building a positive network and creating that sense of belonging and community. So I'm curious, another poll question here. To launch polling, if you had to say why most of your employees at your organization leave, what would you say? Is it mostly not a good fit, lack of opportunities, work environment, all of them, none of them?
Cindy, you didn't list money.
Oh, I have no control over that.
People leave because of money.
I do, aside from money or benefits.
You know, I'll chime in on that because money is important. On the other hand, these other factors can many times overcome the value of pay related to a job. It's not always just money. We've done studies that look at salary expectations and turnover and other attributes, and these other attributes come in to be very important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So it looks like we've got kind of an even spread between the three, and then a big jump with the all of the above. So that is very helpful. We will, let me don't share those results. Okay. And so we're going to address how you deal with all of these reasons why employees leave. Okay. So stopping employee turnover and focusing on the key retention factors that include hiring, training, and inspiring employees. These have been HR strategies for years, but there's few organizations that have really been successful at it. Real employee engagement and retention is a result of the organization's efforts and true investment related to hiring the right people for the job, training them the way they need to be trained, and inspire them, or creating the right environment. And all three of those factors have to work together. The more effort you put into using data to make sure that you're hiring the right people, training the right people, and inspiring the right people in your workforce, the lower your turnover percentage will be. We have programs and analysis on hiring the right person that gives you a quantifiable way of ensuring the right job fit. And we'll be hosting a webinar specifically on that process next month. So we hope you'll join us. We also have programs that analyze training effectiveness and its impact. This webinar is focused on solving the environment influence that leads to turnover by using the Workforce Turnover Audit. It's a way of identifying the strengths and weaknesses of your current management practices, as well as showing if there are issues in your hiring or the training areas. The result of the audit is a workforce development plan that's focused on maximizing employee performance and reducing your turnover. So the Workforce Turnover Audit, you see, it helps you identify and pinpoint why employees are leaving, and it provides you a detailed roadmap to address each individual priority. The audit uses a specific inventory of job-related work experience questions that is customized to the structure of your organization. And so using some AI technology, the system analyzes and calculates the effect in the interaction of employees' likelihood of leaving to their demographics compared to their job, the organization structure, and the perceptions of their job, the team, the manager, and the organization. So that's all that I have on that. Dennis is about to show us how it works in just a few minutes. But before that, here's the process that we go through. We start with the Workforce Turnover Audit. Then we look at the audit data and determine, where are the at-risk audiences? Where's the biggest impact? We establish the targeted training roadmap based on that data, and then implement your results and measure Before we do that, one more quick poll question. One moment. Actually, it's two together, but I'm curious, out of the audience attending here, do you conduct workforce questionnaires? And if so, how often? All right, so it's a pretty good split. It shows that a little more than half actually do the workforce questionnaire, and the most often frequency is annually. Okay. So there is a little bit of experience. Well, Dennis is going to walk us through how the audit works and what makes it different from others. So with that, Dennis, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Cindy, and thanks everybody for being here today. We're excited to tell you about new ways to think about managing this most important thing, turnover. As you can see from what Cindy told us, workforce development and resulting turnover depends on hiring the right people for the job, giving them training they need to develop and grow, really a fundamental human thing, and then managing them in a way that inspires them to produce excellent results. We now want to take a deeper dive into how we identify factors related to hire, train, and inspire. What are the strengths and weaknesses in our organization? And my part of today's presentation will cover some of the challenges of finding these things, how we go about doing it, and how we address them. The first step in the process here is to understand, to get a baseline as to where your organization stands. That is to take a careful look at the strengths and weaknesses. To do this, we use the Workforce Turnover Audit. On this slide, we see an overview of our workforce turnover examination process. We call it the WTA. The WTA examines 4 elements of the workforce: the job, things like, do you have the support you need, training, are proper processes and procedures in place, do you have a work-life balance? We look carefully at the managers. Are they giving you recognition? Are they caring and helpful? Do you have the information you need? Are they fair and objective? Teams, are responsibilities clear? Do team members trust each other? Are they able to work together to resolve conflict? Can they communicate effectively? And organization, does it have the right and clear values, vision, culture, and fairness? So from each of these categorizations, we then find the strengths and weaknesses relative to each dimension. So we're going to probe these 4 factors, and we're going to do it in a number of ways. So our starting point from here is hire, train, and inspire. The questionnaire is about 40 questions in length and is focused on employee engagement and the likelihood of turnover or leaving the organization. The audit takes a deep dive into employees' attitudes, feelings, and then relates those to response factors. The wheel in this slide shows some of those factors. For example, we might look at demographic data such as race, age, gender, disability, and so on. We customize this to your specific job, and it might be your division, a location, a region, a shift, a line, and then we relate it to the other key factors such as manager, team, organization. So we collect large amounts of data, and then we use our analytics and our machine learning programs to help us find insights and combinations of factors that become important for us to address. So with that said, that's a lot of factors to look at. And what we really want to understand is how people feel about they're wanting to stay with the company. So we get about understanding that and relating all these attributes to likelihood of turnover by asking a series of questions. Those questions, then the answers are averaged, and then that average is used to build the models against. So in this particular case, the turnover responses that we aggregated and modeled against were, do you take pride in the company you work for? Do you feel connected to the company? Are you satisfied with your job? Are you motivated to give extra effort? Do you plan to stay and be with the company the next 2 years? And would you refer a friend to work there? So we have a range of ways of getting at the feelings that we then put together and model to. So now that we have the questions and the data construct, let's look at the process we're going to use to dive into this data. The audit process consists of 5 steps as shown here. In step 1, we administer the questionnaire and collect the data. Step 2, we evaluate the data using our machine learning models to find best fit attributes to turnover scores. We then take a deep dive into the data using diagnostics. Here we can pivot many different attributes across many different factors to really understand what is happening. Step 4 is the most powerful step. That's where we use AI to find hidden interactions in the data and suggest strategies in terms of what are the things that are going to be the most effective for us to target in terms of spending our dollars for helping the organization to reduce turnover. And then finally, the last step is the conversion of our data insights into recommended action plans. So now let's take a look at data analytics. And I think data analytics is really the distinguishing feature of our program. So before I show you some of the actual analytics and applications and real world examples, I kind of wanted to explain a point of difference between our analytics and a traditional off-the-shelf survey. Off-the-shelf surveys are fine. Often they're free. The challenge with off-the-shelf surveys is they're generally limited to the use of descriptive statistics. They provide you a simple graphic and give you highlights of what is happening. They really have no diagnostic power or the ability to help you develop targeted action plans. So the off-the-shelf surveys tell you what is happening. They don't necessarily tell you why it is happening or be able to get into the details. The Workforce Turnover Audit, on the other hand, provides diagnostic data that can pinpoint the specifics of what's happening by many different attributes, and then as a result, give you detail in terms of the actions to be taken. This next chart shows you the different levels of analytics that are used by ITN to generate data insights. Most all surveys generally provide descriptive statistics and stop there. We just discussed that in the previous slide. At ITN, we provide the full level of traditional survey descriptive statistics, but we also go and work to show you not only what happened, but why it happened. We predict what will happen next and show you how you can fix it. So the 4 levels of analytics provided in our reports are descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and descriptive. So with that, we're going to go through a few examples of each one. Again, I've got 2 slides here that are just a reminder. We're going to go through the example. When conducting our analysis, we'll examine the engagement of turnover score by demographics, Demographics are shown here, things like what's your position, your age, your location, your tenure. Again, we can do this for anything that you think is important to your job. So for example, in some blue collar jobs, things like travel distance or shift or number of other jobs someone may have may be important factors related to turnover as well, and their feeling about staying or connected. So we can model those in. So I really like the blending of our process and our data analytics with the experience and the knowledge of the managers in the company.
Can we ask everybody to please mute?
They can hear.
Okay, continuing on. The second part of the analysis looks at total scores related to each set of the questions as organized by the job, the team, the manager, and the organization. So that's the overview of how we're going to look at the data. Now let's start looking at some of the details. I think this slide should look familiar to most everyone. This is the simplest of all data analytics. This is typically what you get in a survey, descriptive analytics. Descriptive analytics tell us what has happened. As we can see in the above, how likely are you to stay with the organizations? The employees respond to the question, and we see various levels, some likely to say, some not likely to say. But what does that really tell us? Where is the satisfaction or dissatisfaction coming from? Who's unhappy? Why are they not engaged? What actions need to be taken? So descriptive statistics are helpful, but they're very top line, and we want to have more targeted action plans and more effective action plans. So we will go through the use of diagnostic and AI programs to help us get there. This next slide, we see the next level of analysis, which is diagnostic analytics. Diagnostic analytics use a series of data filters to help find multivariable insights. That is, we look at a combination of factors to tell us specifically where and how the likelihood of turnover is to come from. So for example, in this data sort, we sorted divisions on the left-hand column. You can see those as divisions 1, 2, and 3. And we put on the top their feeling relative to their engagement score, company pride, feeling connected, job satisfaction, motivation, refer a friend, plans to stay. And we can see in division 3 that the lowest score comes from not feeling connected to the organization. Well, as it happens, this was a very accurate assessment of Division 3. Division 3 had recently been acquired by a parent company, and as a result, there wasn't a lot of effort put into the integration. So we took a deeper dive into the data, and that what we found by sorting through some of the other questions and responses is that Division 3 was not aligned to the culture and values of the new parent company. This insight then provided some direction to the owners that more effort was needed to integrate the new business into the culture, values, and visions of the parent company. Here's another example of an even deeper data dive using a number of different attributes that we sorted. In this analysis, we see how different genders, male and female, think about their management team. So the management questions are across the top, and we see management questions: is my manager fair and objective, provide opportunities, informs me, resolves issues, cares about and helps me. And then on the left-hand side, we see the data sorted by division and sorted by gender. And so if you looked at the data carefully, you would see that females in Division 3 have much lower scores than their counterpart males in Division 3. So I pulled that data out and put it at the bottom and highlighted it. And so we had to ask ourselves what's going on in Division 3. So in this particular case, and to save you from doing data dives on slides, in this particular case, we did do the deep dive. And here we saw that it was really young new hire females who were having the biggest challenge in what was predominantly an older, well-established male management group. So needless to say, this was a big surprise to the parent company, and it was addressed very promptly with new training programs and new training and onboarding programs. Okay, so now we've covered descriptive and diagnostic analytics. And now we're coming to, for some of us, the most exciting, unique, and probably helpful part of the analysis, and that's our use of predictive analytics. So from the previous two examples, we have tools that we can pivot, filter, and a great way to observe interactions, but there are no predictive powers in theirs. And it's hard to know what the interactions are. So this is where we use AI to help us understand how all these factors in our analysis work together and where we need to prioritize our resources for further development. In using our AI capabilities, we collect our data and run it through an ensemble. An ensemble is a number of machine learning programs. The programs work together to tell us what models are working the best, what are the critical factors most important that we should take a look at. And so I have a couple of ways there are many ways of visualizing different models. And I put a couple of examples here so that you could see them. The first example is related to organization priorities. And so when we modeled this organization, they were telling us the organization needed to do more work to have more open communication and a better understanding of their values. So we can see those two factors came out in terms of fitting what's important to getting outcomes that was important for them. The second one was evaluation of managers and what they needed to do to help improve retention. And in this particular organization model for managers, it showed that emphasis needed to be placed on teaching managers to be more caring and helpful and to pay more attention to helping resolve conflict and issues within their group. So now that we have some into the power of the questionnaire and our analytical site, we have to ask ourselves the question, what happens next? We've got the data, we have the insights, what should we do next? How do we turn that insight into measurable results? And this is where Cindy comes in to help you.
Thanks, Dennis. It's my video back. Okay. Thank you for taking us through the data. It's exciting stuff. And it is amazing when you see the results come through, and definitely, you know, there are certain stats that just jump off the page and you're like, whoa, I had no idea. So thanks for taking us through that. The data from the audit is definitely going to reveal some things that will tell you exactly where you need to focus. And it highlights the most at-risk employee groups and lets you focus your resources and your budget on the things that matter most to your employees. Okay, so as part of the audit, we review the data, and my personal preference, I love using a SWOT analysis tool because it helps you break it down into actionable steps, and helps you see where to focus. I personally start with the threats because those are the highest priority items and they usually jump off the page. In this example, we see that, as Dennis mentioned, the low manager scores from the female employees that had less than 1 year tenure in location 1. And we also found as a threat that Division 3 indicated low job scores for sales procedures and fit. So we break down from the data. What are the threats, the highest priorities that we need to focus on? Next, I go to weaknesses and what's the second highest priority? On this example, you see across the board, there's low scores in team communications and Division 2 doesn't feel connected. Opportunities are things that should be part of your strategic plan, often that are revealed in the AI models that say, you know what, if you want to increase your retention numbers, focus in these areas. As Dennis had mentioned just a minute ago, you know, helping managers show how they care and resolve conflicts in the teams. And then the last thing I do is I look at the strengths because there's always a positive that comes out of this. There are some things that we see that the company is doing really well. And so we want to highlight that too and say, whatever you're doing in this area, let's continue that and reinforce those things. Then from breaking it down to just into manageable pieces, we say, what is the best action plan that we can put in place to address all of these areas? And again, start with the threats because those are the highest areas that need attention. So like we mentioned with the low scores for managers with the female employees, we might suggest having workplace harassment prevention training or diversity and inclusion and management skills training. We would also recommend implementing the precision hiring process for the sales team to make sure you're hiring the right people for that job. So what we do is we look at all of the different data elements. How does that translate into real life experience? And then what action can be taken by mapping it out in a SWOT analysis? So with the data and the recommendations in hand, you might be thinking, what's next? Now what? Well, you need to address how the audit results will be communicated, right? That's the very next thing. So obviously you're not going to share all the details with everyone in the organization. Like females in location 1 have a problem with their manager. We're not going to share that, but you will need to share some information, especially around high-level themes and action items that you plan to take. We help companies tailor that message as well to each audience and even present the findings so that there's not a perception from the employees that HR or leadership was privy to any specific individual responses, because that's often a fear. These surveys, audits are completely confidential. Dennis and I are the only ones who see the data and no individual details are provided there. In that communication, we definitely want to have defined what solutions will make the biggest impact and how you intend to implement it. And most importantly, we want to talk about how you define success. So with the answers to those questions, and before we communicate to our employees, you want to create that targeted training roadmap. As Dennis mentioned, I can't think of a single plan we've worked on that didn't include a heavy focus on employee education as part of the roadmap. And employee education can come in so many different ways. It can come through focus groups, internal communication campaigns, formal training and workshops. There's a lot of different ways that you can approach it and that we recommend that you approach it. If we go back to the beginning and think about the key to retention, it revolves around aligning employee and company objectives. And so if we've hired the right people for the job, then what's left is to set up employees for success with targeted training and teaching managers how to create the right environment that inspires their employees. And we know that and what will work through the data. Real quick, I'm not going to go through detail on this, but the roadmap. Defining the roadmap is all about the who, what, where, when, how. And most importantly, the financial translation between retained employees and the training investment over time. This is a topic all on its own. Some considerations when you're building that roadmap, though, is you want to look at your company culture and the risks that were identified. What are the biggest threats that need to be focused on? Where do they show business impact? That's probably most important, is how do you align it with the business, and how will you show the metrics? Will employees be open and receptive to this change? Then next, we would look at the audience. What's the best way to deliver the message, the communication, the training to them? You're not going to hand a 500-page manual to a bunch of delivery drivers, right, and tell them to review the policies and procedures. You're more likely to give them video content that's available on a mobile device that they can get in quick snips. So look at your target audience and who you're trying to address. In some groups, it is actual workshops like lunch and learn sessions or interactive focus groups. Again, the audience really contributes to how you're going to best implement this. Also, consider change management. That's often not a part of a roadmap. It's overlooked, but if you're shifting the way that employees are working together or communicate with each other, there's going to be change. And so you want to address how easily employees will adapt to that. Create the right environment that encourages employees to be open and receptive to new ideas. Training has to be engaging and fun. With our short attention spans these days, right? You have to have something that engages. And we've found that experiences are the best way to do that. And experiences come in a variety of ways, right? So virtual reality is an experience. A case study that a group works through is an experience. Gamification is an experience. So anything that creates that engagement is going to prove to be very effective in your training delivery. And then you want to make sure you incorporate it into your existing programs. So let's say you're rolling out a full-on, you found out team communication was lowest score across the company. We need to do something to improve that. So you're rolling out a whole track, a whole curriculum on improving communication. Well, what happens when somebody gets hired? You got to make sure that you've incorporated all of those techniques, all of that training into your new hire programs and into your leadership programs so that it's reinforced by the managers. And then look at conducting learning assessments and possibly even another turnover audit just to make sure that you are tracking and making a difference in the areas that you expect to. At the end of the day, leaders understand that employee turnover is a drain on the organization in terms of cost and resources. They get it. So be sure that your program is aligning up with your leadership team. You want to present the findings to them, discuss programs that you may have done already and maybe where things in the audit had pointed out more focus is needed. Be sure to focus on the positive attributes as well. Set business context and speak in their language. So you want to relate it to business results. Things like efficiency and spending, because we know exactly where to focus our efforts, or higher retention with specific work groups because we are showing them the areas that they need development in. Speak again in their language and gain approval and come up with a timeline, a schedule in which you're going to meet with the leadership team to give updates. That is one of the key factors. It's important to get the alignment up front, but it's even more important to continue that conversation so that you don't miss the alignment. So this is just a high level example of a roadmap. You'll have an executive summary, something like this that you would show a leadership team, and then you'll have your detailed plan with timelines, tasks, assignments, everything that's needed to implement it. All right, so we've got our roadmap, our targeted training schedule in place. We're ready to go. And then Dennis is going to tell us all about how you implement and measure.
Okay, thanks, Cindy. Well, I hope everybody understands now that I am a numbers person and a businessman, and there's nothing that goes better than numbers and business. So the final step in the process that I think will help you is to measure your results to keep track of them over time and to use the insights to improve. And this is one of the greatest features about AI. And the fact that it is, the more data you get, the more you use it, the smarter AI becomes. And so what I will tell you this is this is a learning journey. This is a journey where maybe the first time out, you're going to get a lot of data and have some things to figure out, but you are going to get smarter. Your programs are going to get smarter. Your organization is going to get smarter because you're all going to learn and you're all going to be on the same page because you have data to guide you and substantiate the plans you want to put in place. Now, with that said, I'm going to give you one caveat. AI is the smartest thing on the planet. If you give it data, it is going to find things that you didn't know exist. It's going to give you insights that are incredibly valuable. So I think the world of AI, but I want to be clear, AI does not replace human beings. AI complements human beings. Why doesn't AI replace human beings? Because AI has boundary conditions. It has limitations. It's only measuring certain things. What do humans have? Humans have no limitations. They have feelings, perceptions, experience, ideas. They have all of these things that AI doesn't have. Conversely, AI has all of these things that humans don't have. So when you put them together, you really end up with a phenomenal system that can give you some power and insights to really make a difference. The next slide is just the next step in the process of this journey. And that is you really want to start benchmarking where you're at, putting your programs in place, and then measuring yourself against where you were, where you're going, and how well you're doing. And I think it's pretty obvious to everybody, there's many kinds of benchmarks. You can pick the ones that are important to you. There's internal benchmarks where you have one result and then you're comparing it against standards. Maybe you compare regions, divisions, you use time benchmarks. You may want to use competitive benchmarks and so on. But the important thing is to put a stake in the ground, get the insights, implement the action plans, and then to use those stakes in the ground as a way to measure your progress. So in conclusion for this, maximizing the productivity of your workforce requires effective management and alignment of the behavior, the skills, the attitudes, and the values of your organization to the job, the team, the manager, and the company or organization as a whole. And by using the turnover audit, you're going to get insights that can direct your actions, whether it is actions for alignment through your hiring process, through your training development, and through your management or teaching your managers how to inspire the organization to get the extra effort and the excellence that's needed to do a good job. So with that, I'm going to turn it right back to you, Cindy, and let you wrap this up.
All right. Thanks, Dennis. Here we go. So the key to retention is hiring the right person for the job, right? Giving them the training that they need to be successful and creating an environment that they want to be a part of. The Workforce Turnover Audit will help you identify and pinpoint why employees are leaving and provide you a clear path to a solution that will help you slow down the churn. So there you have it, the 4 steps in effectively looking at a turnover solution that will hopefully solve your turnover problems. I am hoping this has been helpful to you. I want to we will be sending a follow-up email out to everyone that has the evaluation, sorry, I lost the word, and a free ebook and other resources that we'll send to you. And if you are interested in learning more about the audit or even seeing an actual audit report, answer yes to this poll question and we will send you some follow-up. And you can also scan on the screen the QR code if you want to download the ebook now. All right, thank you for that. That people are still answering, so I'll give it a few seconds. That just helps us know who wants a follow-up to find out more information about the audit. All right. Thank you so much for that. And now with that, we only have, what, a few minutes left, but questions?
Yes, this was fantastic. I have never seen so much information about an audit. That is great. We've got some good questions here. Let's start with Gloria's. She says, this is great. Given limited resources, how have companies made the case for investment in conducting such an audit? How do you help organizations to do this?
I'll take that, and Cindy, you can add in here as well. The audit really isn't all of that expensive, so I think for the consultation you get with Cindy and myself and our teams, and then to understand the structure and to actually implement it, there can be simple versions or larger complex versions. But I think starting the journey is not that it's an easy process to do.
Yeah, and I would add to that, unlike traditional surveys where you're paying by person who completes the survey, this is based on the demographics and how much you want to slice and dice and get detailed data, right? So there's different varieties in ways that you can look at this and start out.
Thank you. The next question. Cindy says, Cindy Doty, another Cindy. Hi, Cindy. What size organizations are a good fit for the audit? How small?
I think we do all sizes. And as Cindy was saying, it really comes down to how much you can slice the data. I think we just did one with 35 people and we got some excellent results. I think if we go below 25 people, you're really just looking at top line results. With 35 to 50 people, we could typically slice the data a couple of different ways. And obviously there's no limit on the upside for how big of an organization we can do. In fact, the more data, the more specific we can get.
Right.
Okay, and here's the question everybody's been wanting to ask. How much does it cost?
Well, it's very inexpensive. Prices start around $1,500. So for very little money, you can get started. If you have a larger organization and want very few data slices, it's very inexpensive. If you're a larger organization and want to deep dive by division and gender and location and line and manager and shift, then as we have a table that we use that will help you to do it, but typically anywhere from $1,500 to probably, I would say, $7,000 or $8,000. So for a large, highly complex, detailed look.
So you kind of customize it to the organization.
Right, and to what fits your budget and what fits your needs. So we'll sit down and work with you.
Okay, that's great. Okay, here's another one. Is the audit anonymous?
Yes, the audit, we right up front say no names, so no individual names or identification of people are used. And in addition, then we are aggregating data, so there is no individual data. And we're sensitive to the aggregation. So if there are only 2 people in sales, then we wouldn't have a sales score. Typically, that's not a problem, but we keep the data very anonymous in numerous ways.
Good. How long does it take to do the audit?
Cindy, you want to take that one?
Sure. Well, it really depends on the organization and how good you are at getting the results back, right? I know that we have had one organization, they rolled out the audit within 1 week. They asked for all the feedback. We had it in 1 week, and then in 1 week, we had the data ready to report back to them.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So
And sometimes collecting the data by the organization is the longest part. So typically our part is 1 to 2 weeks.
It's not bad. Okay, this is probably going to be our last question. What is the response rate that you try to achieve?
So response rates vary. And I would say a low response rate is probably about 45 to 50%. A high response rate is 75 to 85% is our typical experience.
Okay, we just had one more pop up. I think we have time for one more. What are obstacles to gathering the information?
Cindy, you want to take that?
Right. So biggest obstacle I would say is employees feel like somehow managers or HR will know their responses. And so there's a fear of providing feedback. It's the first time the company's done an audit or any type of survey. And so there's a suspicion around who's looking at my information and what kind of retaliation might I experience.
Yeah,
That's the biggest.
yeah.
And that's why it's good to use a third party too, because we keep everything anonymous. We know how to handle the data. We know how to aggregate it, and we're not a part of the group.
Right. Well, thank y'all so much. This was a fantastic webinar. Lots of great information and certainly some good tips on how to stop the turnover in your organization. And to find out it's customized to the size of the organization is really fantastic. I want to let you guys know next Thursday, and by the way, these guys are going to be back. When is your next one, Dennis?
April 22nd.
April 22nd. So we'll let you know, and we look forward to you joining us for the next one. And next Thursday, we are going to, our next presentation will be Cultivating Emotional Intelligence in the Midst of Instability and Creating EI Awareness and Action to Demonstrate HR Value. And this webinar next Thursday has already been approved for Business Credit 2, and it will be sponsored by the Leadership Development Group. Dennis, Cindy, thank you so much for a fantastic webinar, and we can't wait until your next one. And be sure and catch their articles in HR Professionals magazine.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining us.